I'm Elizabeth Noyce, and you're listening to Supergirl Radio.
McGurk! I love typing.
Not mess with my Google Docs, Meeksy. Supergirl Radio is going live every night of the week. How do you like it? Is becoming a human burrito a plus or a minus? I don't know. It does seem snug.
I mean, they say you are what you eat.
Kira.
I love that.
So I do a podcast called Supergirl Radio, and one of our segments is Lena Luthor, Boardroom or Ballroom, because
she looks like a boss in this coat.
Nasty Luthor like a different Luthor? It's not just Lena being mean?
No.
Helen Slater here. So fun to know that you're hosting a podcast called Supergirl Radio.
Welcome to Supergirl Radio, your source for all things related to the CW Supergirl TV series and the character of Kara Zor-El. My name is Rebecca Johnson.
I'm Morgan Glennon.
And for this episode of the podcast, we are live and wired with legendary lady Kat Calamia from the Legends of Tomorrow podcast to discuss the 5-episode event of The Flash titled Armageddon. Welcome back to Supergirl Radio, Kat.
Thank you. You know, I'm excited to be here. I don't know if I'm excited to talk about what we're going to talk about tonight, but
it's gonna be great,
I'm excited to be with great company.
Well, I guess we should say that it's Supergirl Radio / Legends of Tomorrow podcast. This is a crossover event of our own. So we are doing a kind of joint effort here, a crossover event, if you will. But
which one of us is here just to advise the others on their love lives and then leave? Who's the Alex of this crossover?
Oh God. Maybe someone should pop into this podcast, and that way they can be the Alex, but for part 4. So you had to wait a little while for Alex to show up.
just come on in. I feel like I should address that that Amy would have loved to be here with us. It was actually kind of Amy's idea.
She would have been the Alex.
She would have been the Alex. She's got wise advice. Unfortunately, she did injure herself, and she is recuperating at home, and so we're hoping that she gets better soon.
Yeah, we wish Amy all the best. I know it stinks to have an injury and go to the hospital and have to have a recovery. So hopefully, if she watches this, it will bring bring some smiles and joy in that time. But yeah, it's kind of strange. I feel like maybe I'm the one going on the Legends of Tomorrow podcast. I was really two-thirds. The legendary ladies are here with me. So welcome, Kat. Thank you for joining us for this discussion. Before we talk about the television event known as Armageddon, though, I wanted to talk about the comic Armageddon because there is a comic book connection, I think, to this Armageddon comic series. In 1991, DC Comics published a crossover event titled Armageddon 2001 that ran for 2 issues, and then after that, it extended into 2 other titles, Armageddon, The Alien Agenda, number 1 through 4, and Armageddon Inferno, number 1 through 4. And this is kind of the story. We'll just recap it real quick for those who haven't read it. The story starts out in the year 2030, which doesn't seem that far away now, and features a character named Matthew Ryder, who later becomes the superhero known as Wave Rider, who wants to put an end to the tyrannical rule of Monarch. To do this, Ryder becomes the perfect candidate for a time travel experiment that Monarch wants to do to make sure that his secure and perfect world will stay intact. Ryder returns to 1991, which is 10 years before Monarch massacres the entire Justice League in 2001. So there's a 10-year time difference here. What makes Matthew Ryder the perfect candidate for this experiment, even though everyone else before him never returned in their time travel? Love. Love is the thing that makes him the perfect candidate for this because he has a great deal of love for his family. Ryder is willing to risk his life and bet it all on love because he is determined to find out who the Monarch really is and, if possible, kill him before he could rise to power. The big twist at the end is that Monarch, the big bad of the story, was actually at one time a member of the Justice League.
Dun, dun, dun.
I won't spoil that reveal for anyone here at this point. We may get to it in the feedback section. So just FYI, in the feedback, we might talk about who Monarch actually is. But I won't spoil it here in case you want to read it. You can skip over at the end. But the ending actually caused some controversy at the time because the original ending and the reveal of who Monarch was had been leaked before they got to reveal it. And so DC had to change it, which resulted in a big mess for the story.
Who was it originally supposed to be?
Well, let's get to that. We'll get to that in the feedback because we did have a listener who wrote in with a joke about that. But you can imagine when the story doesn't make a lot of sense and it becomes a huge mess, fans were not very happy about it. So
that's so interesting that they actually changed the ending because it got leaked and now they just leak their own stories. They write like New York Times articles about them.
Well, back then it was a big deal. And, there wasn't, I guess, as much online presence. There really wasn't the internet back in those. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I really didn't know about the internet until about 1994, back in the old days.
That's when I was born.
So that would have been a pretty big deal back then. So there are some similarities to the Flash's version of Armageddon. There's a 10-year time travel difference. There's a character willing to kill the villain of the future, love being the catalyst for time travel, and a hero who becomes a villain. So a lot of similarities in the Armageddon television event and the Armageddon comic book series. So I thought we would address those just in case you wanted to go check those out, because you can find it on Comixology if you want to get the digital version of it.
I think it's interesting that there's a character named Wave Rider, like as in like Legends of Tomorrow. Wave Rider?
I know. I was like wait,
that's
what?
Interesting.
Gideon?
And he's a
Is Gideon the Wave Rider?
He's kind of a time traveler too.
There you go. Maybe somehow Legends of Tomorrow is like, I remember this 90s story that no one else does, and we're going to use this. I don't think so, but you never know.
Yeah, it is an odd coinky dink if that is the case. All right, so now that we have brushed up on the comic book version, let's talk about what they did with the television adaptation and what Flash was doing with the story and what the story it was telling. So, Kat, since you are our guest for this discussion, this live stream, I'm very curious. What did you think about the story? I guess we'll start high level and then we'll break it down. So, what did you think about the story that they were telling over the 5 episodes?
That's an interesting question. Well, first of all, I haven't watched the Flash in about 2 seasons, probably. It's been a little while since I've watched the Flash, but I feel like nothing has changed and everything has changed. So the idea, like the flow of the show is so similar. Like a lot of things that are going on in the show, I feel like, oh, I've seen this a billion times. Nothing's changed about this show. Like I don't feel like they're doing anything fresh. I still don't think they're doing anything fresh. But then there's like all these random new characters.
I'm like, who are you people?
Yeah, and it's like, but also they're filling in this role that we've seen before. So it wasn't like, oh, this is like an interesting new character. It's like, oh, you're really just filling in the role of Cisco. You're the science guy. And I'm sure personality-wise they're different. But I felt like because I never knew this character, I didn't really even find a personality besides this whole love life thing going on. I think I knew of the girl. I've seen her before, but before she was a series regular. So I've seen her here and there. But overall, I mean, I have a lot of thoughts about how they utilize the characters in these episodes. But as a Flash episode, it didn't really do much for me. I don't think, unless I had this podcast, I know I wouldn't watch it, you know, like it just, I'm glad I'm not watching the show anymore. It just, I feel like it you know, even though I have a lot of grievances about Arrow and other shows, and even, you know, Arrow, I feel like ended when it needed to end. Maybe it lasted 2 more seasons than it should have, but at least it ended and like
maybe
4
seasons.
Episodes. Maybe 4 seasons.
Maybe 4 seasons.
Maybe 4 when something in particular happened, but
who knows what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Couldn't guess.
I feel like though at least they like kind of knew when they were wrapping up. They led to a last season. It was only 13 episodes. Flash doesn't seem like it knows when it's wrapping up. There's so many people have left the show now, and they're still trying to, tug on. So yeah, I didn't love it, and I will give my opinions on what they did with Ray, especially. I have some interesting thoughts on that, but yeah, it was just kind of there.
Yeah, we'll break down the Ray Palmer aspect and the Alex Danvers aspect when we get there. So Morgan, what were your thoughts about the story they were trying to tell with the time travel and Reverse Flash and the things that Barry was going through?
It was great. No, I'm actually
the complete opposite thoughts.
Didn't care for it. I just wanted to provide a counterpoint. No, it was one of those things where I also haven't watched The Flash and longer than Kat. I feel like it was like the Earth X crossover was like the last time.
That was a while ago.
It was a long time ago. The last time I was even moderately caught up on The Flash. So for me, it was like an exciting period of being like, who's that? She's got powers? Why is Cecile so angry?
She was angry a lot.
She was
and
so
also
angry.
one thing, there was this, I think it was the middle episode where Joe dies. And I'm like, did he die in the show? I was getting so confused where I'm like, did he die? I don't know.
I think that the idea was like for longtime viewers, they'd be like, Joe's not dead. What are they all talking about? But I was like, guess Joe's dead.
Exactly. I was so confused.
Barry was like, I don't understand why everyone's saying Joe's dead. I was like, dude, because Joe's dead. What? We've just accepted it, right? Like that happened ages ago. So for me, it was also kind of a weird thing where I felt like I don't know if they were gearing it to people who haven't watched the show in ages or who haven't watched the show ever. They thought they were going to bring people on for Armageddon because I felt like there was a lot of people just walking and going, here's Star Labs, the labs where we do Star stuff. And you're like, here, this is where Team Flash does all of our stuff here at Star Labs. And you're like, it feels weird that you would say that because you're all here and you're all here all the time. So it feels like you don't need to intro like specific people or places or locations. But like throughout the whole like 5 episode thing, there'd be people like saying like, well, like that one time that you saved me, literally, remember that episode? And I'm like, no, I haven't been watching, but thank you, I guess, for the recap. So there's like a lot of like really weird, heavy exposition in the dialogue that felt very unnatural. It was helpful for me, a person who hasn't watched it in like 4 years, but I was like, as a regular viewer, I think I would be like, does everyone have a concussion? Like, is everyone okay? Why do they keep repeating like, hello, it's me, Joe, your father? It's like, she knows.
Speaking of repeating things and dialogue being strange, did anyone notice that they said level up a lot? It really bothered me. And the Supergirl radio listeners know that sometimes when words get repeated, it drives me crazy. I believe they said level up at least 7 times throughout the 5 episodes, which doesn't seem like a lot, but I think they said it, let's see, the first episode, the first part, they said it 5 times in that one episode. And I was like, y'all need to stop saying
they're like,
level
Barry,
up.
you remember when you leveled up your super speed? And I was like, yeah, like I'm pretty sure he does. He was there. It just kept on reminding me of on the Legends of Tomorrow podcast. We're doing like a fantasy, like kind of like fantasy football, but we all have our own teams of characters that we're playing throughout the season to see who wins. And Kat's team name is Team Level Up.
Level Up.
So every single time that they said it, I was like, level up, level up.
And I wasn't getting any fantasy points for them saying level up. So I don't understand why they were doing
that
it.
in.
Yeah, but I thought the story with Barry and the Reverse Flash I thought was interesting. The fact that he I think this is the first time they've explained on the Flash. I haven't been watching like in like 2 or 3 seasons either, so none of us are caught up on the Flash. But
Amy said she was gonna catch up, so sadly she's not on this podcast.
We gotta have somebody to explain it. But I think this is the first time they've explained maybe that why Reverse Flash always wanted to kill the Flash, or why he had such a big beef with the Flash.
I
think this
the
is
most direct. I know they always talk about his mom a lot. When they talk about the Reverse Flash, they're always talking about his mom. I will say that I agree. I think that was one of the better parts of this episode, was just seeing like Barry wear the Reverse Flash costume. But I feel like it's like, okay. The one thing I will say, the structure of these episodes too, I'm guessing as a Flash fan, was interesting because at least it wasn't a long 20 episode arc where they're tackling the Thinker. At least it was 5 episodes of something different. So that was cool for them, I'm guessing.
Yeah, but talking about the Thinker, one of the things that did bother me about this event is, and we've dealt with this on Supergirl Radio, anytime you give people powers where it's like mind powers, it's the most uninteresting thing to watch. And it's almost like uncomfortable for me to watch because they're like, I gotta think about it. I gotta think about it really hard. And then, like, at some point, when Cecile and that other chick, Rosa, I think Rosa Dillon, had the mind powers and they were like doing it together, I was like, this is weird to me. Like, this is I almost feel like I should not be watching this. Like, it's turning into something I'm not comfortable watching. Like, it was a little, like, I think they were likening it to being high or on drugs, but I was like, that's not the vibe I'm getting here. And it was weird for me to watch. And I wish people would stay away from the mind powers, but they like doubled down on the mind powers. Mind powers and like hacking ability to me are like, anytime speaking of Arrow, like anytime Felicity would be hacking, be like, oh, this is completely uninteresting. They had to add smoke one time. There was a scene where Felicity was hacking so hard her computer turned to smoke. But the mind powers were not that was a real negative point for me. And
one of my big negatives, I think, was, and I haven't been watching The Flash in a while, has the acting always been so screamy on this show?
It feels like they've all
Why I want to be nice. It was also funny because like all the screamy acting was always against Iris, who reacted like kind of like a normal person would be, like going like, why are you screaming at me? just kind of like a demure shrug. And so the screaming seemed even more unhinged. Like Cecile like goes off on her in the one episode, and you're like, whoa, you are at a 25 and Iris is at like a -10. And like, I don't know what I'm supposed to take from this scene.
I think it was more of like they're bored with the material. I think that's the best way I could go. It's just like, again, they're doing the same thing over and over again. They're like, let me try this out, you know?
What if I screamed all my lives?
Yeah, Cecile was kind of a tough one to get through in these episodes. And there was one moment where Cecile had this mask on that I was like, are they introducing a superhero identity for her? Are they going there? Because on the CW, like everybody on the cast has,
of course, eventually everyone becomes a superhero. And I hadn't watched it in so long that I was like, Cecile has powers? And then she came out with that like crazy mask, and I was like, wait, is Cecile a serial killer? Because maybe now I'm back in.
That's how the arc ends.
That did look a little serial killer, not very heroic like, but that was kind of a down point for me. But I did like the idea that the Reverse Flash thing with the motivation where he was just kind of like jealous that the Flash stole his thunder. That was a little disappointing. Like, really, he was just kind of jealous of him. That seemed to be kind of a letdown. But I like the idea that he basically said the only way to beat you is to become you, essentially. And I thought that was kind of interesting. So I did like the whole Reverse Flash becoming the Flash and being engaged to Iris and all of that. I thought that aspect of it, the flip around, was pretty cool.
Yeah, I feel like they just cannot let go of the Reverse Flash on that show. Like they just can't do it. They've tried, but they're like, gosh, I wish I could quit you. Like they're right back every time. And I should have known, like at the end of like the 4th episode when things were ending kind of, and I was like, there's a whole nother episode of this crossover, that like they were gonna find a way to bring him back. And they did. And like the 5th episode was the episode that like broke my spirit, I think, in this crossover. Like
5 was too many episodes.
1 through 4, I was like, okay, this is stretched out. This is a little ridiculous. But okay, it's been a while since I've watched The Flash. It's kind of fun to like drop in on the characters and see what's different. Not much. And see, who are these people? I don't know. I'm going with it. Cecile's thinking real hard. We've got all that stuff going on. But then the episode 5 came around, and it was just like, hey, this guy who's saying he's actively still is always going to try to kill you, we should definitely save him, right? And it's like, yeah. But then but my favorite part of that is that like at no point did they even consider saving Damien Dark, who was like who helped them out and was kind of repentant, and he was like, well, no, I mean, that dude's gonna die. He didn't like explicitly ask me to save him, and so I can't do anything.
And speaking of Damien, and somebody mentioned it in our chat, said like obviously the people like the Flash writing room did not watch Legends, and I agree, because that Damien arc happened in the show already. So I'm like,
Yes.
why are we having this?
Yes, a lot of it felt like, yeah, the stuff with Damien felt like retread, definitely. Like we've been through that on Legends entirely.
Like to a T, to an
like,
actual T. It's the same arc.
The same arc, the same like hitting the same points. It's like, oh, he's redeemed because he loves his daughter, and like it's like, yeah, I know.
And she
watched
doesn't
those
show
episodes.
up, right?
She
Did she
shows
show
up in the last episode in like the last 5 minutes, and they like almost touch hands, and then he disappears, and then she's in the middle of the club, and everybody's like, oh, you're crying about your dead dad is kind of harshing our chill. Could you like take it down?
I was gonna ask y'all about that, if that was something that was unexplored, or if that was just a retread. So that's good to know.
It was extremely explored.
Like for a whole season and a half.
Yeah. They even brought like when Damien Dark died on Legends, they like went out of their way to be like, he is the deadest a dead person can ever be. The most dead. His soul doesn't exist. It is in the ether now. No one will ever see him again. He is the deadest. He went through a character arc, and he had his resolution with Nora, and now he is very dead. And like, so I just laughed as soon as he came back. I showed it back up on the Flash. I was like, or he's back again. All right.
Different timeline. So forgive that.
A manipulation of time.
It's so funny.
So speaking of some Legends characters, I guess we could hit Ray Palmer first, since that seemed to segue nicely into it. So it seems like the legendary ladies might have some thoughts about Ray Palmer. So Kat, we'll start with you. How did you think that they portrayed or treated Ray Palmer in Armageddon?
I feel like they went out of their way to dog on Legends, like saying like,
yes,
he kept mentioning he was a legend. And you're like, nah, you're better than being the Legends. It's like, what? And then he just said, like, it kept feeling like the Legends didn't like him anymore, and it just felt so weird, and I didn't like his place here. And first of all, because he wasn't a Flash character, so maybe if this was Arrow, let's say, oh, this was his roots, so that's why they're bringing him back and saying, oh, you belong in this side of the universe. First of all, he was never on the Flash unless it was a crossover, so it wasn't like, oh, he's coming back home. He's just like, no, that thing you did, that's so little. You're so much better than that, Ray. You're so much bigger than that. And I felt like the whole entire point was saying, oh, Legends is not that great.
Yeah. I felt like it was really kind of disrespectful to Legends, but not just that, because they had him say several times like, well, I'm not a legend anymore. But like the thing about the Legends on this show is that they always say is like, once a legend, always a legend. Like once you've been on the Wave Rider, like you can always come back. You're always part of the family. And Ray was like, not me though. I'm out. Like, what? And yeah, to your point, Kat, I had forgotten until you mentioned that he like went out of his way to be like, Sarah never takes my calls anymore. I was like, brutal.
It just felt so weird. And then the overall arc just being like, oh, I'm trying to find myself and stuff like that, I guess was nice, but it just felt like he was there to be there. It didn't actually feel like it was a necessary story to tell, which is kind of what this whole crossover was, and obviously we're going to talk about Alex and all these other characters that show up. But it's just like, why are you here? Why does Ray Palmer have to be here? And they tried a little because at least that guy, the newer guy, was Chester. A fanboy. Yeah, Chester was a fanboy of Ray. So I'm like, all right, at least there was that connection. And there was the other Adam character shows up, and for some reason they don't want them to talk. It's like they're in the same crossover, and they don't have it.
Yeah, that would be pretty neat to see the Atom meet the Atom.
Well, it's kind of like technically Ray and Nora were both in this crossover. They are married in the Arrowverse. They did not cross paths once in this crossover, which was strange. It's like you're gonna have Ray and you're gonna have Nora, but you're not gonna have them in the same episode at any point. Why? It's
can't very take the quarantine thing.
No, they're clearly quarantined together. They're the safest too. Yeah, well, I like that they at least gave him, because we'll get to Alex, but like they at least gave him something approximating like a character arc or like something going on with his character that he had to like address and think about, like, you know, what's next for me. And I think that you know, when Ray left Legends, which it felt like didn't make sense why he was leaving, and it kind of never did. So it was kind of nice to see like, well, what's Ray doing now that he's not with the Legends? I could have done with like a way less like Legends of Tomorrow. That's in the past and I'm never going to talk to them again. That kind of shade, but like just what Ray Palmer was planning to do next in his life, that I liked, and him trying to figure out if he was going to step back from all the superheroics or from the like the sciencey stuff and just get into research, and then he kind of gets drawn back into it. Like that stuff I didn't mind, but it was just all the stuff with like the super, like to your point, he was in the same crossover with the other Adam. They never talk at any point.
Yeah, I was even confused about Ray's arc, though, because his whole thing was he wants to have a balanced life with his work and his wife, and he didn't seem to want to be the Atom anymore, and then he becomes the Atom again and does all of that. And I don't know if he leave the story going back to not being the Atom? I was a little confused about that.
From the regular Legends, he just got married. I think it was just more of the way they ended it was that they could come back to the Wave Rider at any point. I don't feel like he ever quit being a superhero, so it's kind of weird that's even the arc that they chose here. It's like, I don't want to be the Atom anymore. Because that wasn't really something that was there in the regular show.
Yeah, he left to spend more time with his family or whatever, like a disgraced politician. But yeah, I never got the impression when he was leaving that he was like, superheroics, not for me anymore. Like he didn't say like, I'm not the Atom anymore. So yeah, when we get into this and he's kind of like, you know, I'm not gonna build another company. I'm not gonna be the Atom. I'm taking it slow. I was like, okay, really?
Because if you were going to go that route, why wouldn't you have Ray sort of step back from the Atom and then Ryan Choi come in and say, "Hey, I'll do it. I'll put on the suit." That would make more sense to me.
I don't know why Ryan Choi was here.
Thank you. Yes. Kat and I are of a mind. I was going to say,
there you go.
I was confused about his presence on the crossover at all. Love. He had to give that good romantic advice. Yeah, no, I had like many questions about him on it. I was like, has he been in other things besides, was it Crisis was the last thing that he was in?
I think that's
I don't think he's on Flash. Yeah, I think he's just like appeared on this and that's it. So
it felt weird to me that nobody was like, they went to great pains to like walk into rooms and be like, this is my bedroom, but randomly he shows up and nobody explains his presence in any way.
Well,
yeah, he just felt like part of the team.
Yeah, they seem to be referencing Crisis on Infinite Earths with him because Alex talks to Ryan Choi about him missing out on the best part of being human, and he was the paragon of humanity. So I think they were turning his character on its head.
Yeah, also,
but they don't remind us about that.
No.
Didn't he have a family in Crisis, or did I make them up?
No, I think he did.
Because I thought his
Yeah, I
whole
think
thing
that
was
the
like he
whole
had
point.
didn't he have like a newborn at home?
I
Yeah.
think he did.
Whoa.
So apparently Crisis got rid of them. Sorry about that, kid.
Well, I think this is a different timeline.
Yeah,
I'll give
I
him
think it's
that.
just a different-
So
Okay.
this was supposed to be like if Barry Allen was Reverse Flash. So I'll give him a point.
Yeah, so I just wasn't sure what I was supposed to take from his mere presence in these episodes at all. It's like you're bringing him back, but it's a different version of the character, but you're not going to explain like how he ended up with Team Flash or give any of the exposition that you've been giving like in the last the last 3 episodes. He's just going to kind of pop up randomly, and we're just supposed to roll with it.
He also popped up as the Atom in a costumed Atom suit, and that's not really explained either.
No.
So it was cool to see because I think it was a pretty comic booky looking suit, but that kind of stuff maybe should have explained a little better.
But I also feel like one detriment, and we're talking about the comic book from the 90s, where it's like they changed the ending because it was leaked. I think a big downfall for this crossover is that they spoiled everything before we watched it. So knowing that Ray was going to be in it, and Alex was going to be in it, and Ryan was going to be in it.
And then Barry was going to be the Reverse Flash. That was
exactly.
Oh,
If
yeah.
you knew all this information, what was the point? There is no exciting moment in these 5 episodes. Again, maybe Ray and Ryan meeting would have been a great exciting moment for comic fans, but I think like the most genuine moment of this crossover was probably Black Lightning and Flash interacting. I thought at least that like had a heartbeat and like was good. And for people that miss Black Lightning, you get to see that character return and it means something.
And
but other than that,
he had a reason to be there. It made sense that his lightning power would be something that could take away Barry's lightning power. So I think that actually made sense.
And it also connected back to Barry and his connection from the Crisis.
Right.
Where they spend some time together and they kind of bond. So like to me, his inclusion made perfect sense and I really liked it. I liked seeing Jefferson in this crossover. Whereas some of the other characters was like, why are you here?
Yeah, I think with Ryan Choi, I think he was there mostly to serve the Chester Allegra storyline because he had the worst line, I think, in my opinion, in the whole 5-episode event. He says, Chester's my boy, and I know what my boy needs. And I was like, please stop talking. Please don't say anything else.
I cringed so hard at that line.
Bad. It was really bad.
I felt it as like a full body chill. I was like,
Stop
we don't
talking
even know
about
they're
your boy.
friends.
Yeah.
This is when did they become friends?
We don't get exposition on that, but we were told that Star Lab was where Team Flash made all their best memories.
Yeah, that was uncomfortable for me to watch. So I don't know. I really liked seeing Ryan Choi again, but I don't know that he was utilized very well and to his full effect.
It felt like they just wanted some special guest appearances in this event, and they just kind of picked random. They didn't pick people who would like make sense to be in the crossover, except for Jefferson from like Black Lightning. Everybody else just felt like, I don't know, I guess Ryan Choi is available. Let's get him in there. It's like
We haven't seen him in a while.
Ray from Legends. He what's he doing? Let's get him in there. Like,
well, given Alex's inclusion, I think it was just kind of whoever was available at the time.
I think so. Well, the funny thing is, like, Ray barely did anything plot wise. Like, I feel like my biggest memories of Ray in this crossover event are like him going around a convention and talking about seed funding.
It's important. It's really plot-driven stuff for sure.
Yeah, he's like, "Will I invest? Who knows? Not in you, kids. Sorry, dreams crushed."
I do like at the end though. He set up that foundation in memory of Chester's father. I thought that was really nice that he kind of thought more about what Chester was doing, and he was encouraged to invest in the next generation of scientists and researchers. I thought that was a nice ending point for Ray, given what he had done towards the beginning of his little arc there. So I thought that was nice, at least, given what he had sort of disappointed Chester there at Jitters when he was like, you know what? I don't want to do this. I don't want to listen to your pitches.
Ray was never even that mean, though.
Yeah,
This guy was heartbroken. And I'm like, he wasn't that bad.
Well, the other thing that I thought was really funny is like Ray was just like, oh, you know what? I kind of gotten out of the investing game. I don't really want to do the Shark Tank thing anymore. And Chester was like, everyone go home. Your dreams are dead. And I was like, boy,
I don't think Chester was being a nice guy in this one, right?
No,
like, I feel like he was being a little selfish.
I was like, this new guy needs to drink less of that caffeine there at Jitters.
Well, he to Ray's credit, Chester didn't ask him about that. He just sprung it on him last minute. So that maybe should have been something that he talked to Ray about. There are some questions we have in the chat. I don't know if y'all know the answer to this. Was there ever a connection to find between Ryan Choi and the girlfriend of Thunder and Black Lightning? I don't know.
I don't think so.
Answer.
I don't think so.
From what I saw of Black Lightning, but I didn't watch the last season.
Yeah, I'm not current. I think I watched about most of the first season, so I'm not helpful in any way.
Sorry about that, Brian. We don't know the answer to that question. If anybody in the chat knows the answer, please let us know.
I see a lot of Batwoman comments, which I want to mention because someone said I forgot Batwoman was there, and I did too. I honestly forgot she was in this crossover.
I think she just showed up to get fancy. To just go to a formal event. She's like, why don't I ever get to go to the parties? I want to go to the parties.
And is the
different timeline?
Is the baby subplot something that's being discussed on Batwoman?
So I am not.
I'm not
current
on Batwoman.
I'm not either.
I only watched the first season. I have to catch up on the remaining two. So I couldn't even begin to guess if she and Sophie are thinking about babies. Feels like a mistake for a superhero show, but that's not my call to make.
Well, Alex Danvers did it. Sentinel and Guardian could do it.
Alex Danvers waited until the end of the show, though. She was like, it's the final season. I remember I want kids now.
So yeah, don't expect that baby subplot to come to fruition until the end of Batwoman. That's my guess. So let's see. Mind the Gap in the chat says there is no connection between Ryan and Grace.
Ryan and Sophie aren't even dating on Batwoman.
Oh,
that's hysterical.
So the Flash writers wrote a future endpoint for Batwoman that had nothing to do with the Batwoman TV series.
No,
wow, they're just making stuff up for other shows' lead characters.
The Flash writers are just big shippers, and they're like, "Listen, we're just putting it out. It's an alternate universe, so anything could happen, but we're just putting it out into the universe."
I mean, you don't have to commit to it, but you maybe should commit to it.
Maybe you
guys, let them have babies.
Maybe you two crazy kids should have kids.
Wow, that's
a lot of pressure on a not even dating couple.
Wow. Okay, that's good to know. Well, someone also says Levi says Ryan and Sophie are on the path of getting together in season 3. So I guess
are they on the path of having babies?
Well, they're maybe
not together yet. Let's hope not.
I think they talk about it amongst friends. They're like, "How about if we had a kid? Why not?"
Yeah. So I did like the Ryan Wilder her conversation with Iris. I thought that was a kind of a nice dynamic in the episodes that seemed to kind of be a thread, I guess, in that timeline. They're really good friends, so I did enjoy that. So yeah, the Batwoman stuff. I guess she was really only there to serve Iris's story.
Yeah.
Or just show up as a cameo, honestly. If
yeah.
just kind of there for the namesake. It's like, oh, we have something from Supergirl. We have something from Black Lightning. We have someone from all the other shows. Let's bring in someone from Batwoman.
I think out of all the cameos, hers felt the most like a true cameo. Like it's like, and also starring Batwoman. She just like turns around, winks, and then she never appears again.
I
Like,
don't mind, honestly. If you're gonna like not have an arc for someone, just do something like that. Like I feel like that was the better route.
Yeah.
They should have just had Ray come in, like give finger guns, and then just like walk out of frame.
Yeah, so I didn't mind the Batwoman stuff, and I thought some of the scenes with Iris were pretty good. So I thought Batwoman, comparatively to some of the other characters, I think was handled pretty well.
Yeah, I liked her friendship with Iris. I don't know if they've ever met in the regular timeline or if they know each other in the regular timeline.
I
But
don't
like
think
to think they
so.
would be friends. They seem like they had a chill vibe.
They did have a chill vibe. I think this is the first time she's been on a crossover because the last crossover was Crisis, I believe. This is the first time they would have crossed over.
Yeah,
That's right.
So I like to think that they'll be friends in the future. That's fun.
I hope so.
Yeah, that would make sense to me. I guess let's go, because we mentioned Alex a couple of times, but I guess maybe we should just really get into it now. So Morgan, I'm curious, what did you think about this is the last time we'll get to see Alex Danvers as Sentinel and as Alex Danvers, I guess, in the Arrowverse, unless they bring her back in future iterations or future crossovers. This is it. The show's over. This is the last chance we're going to get to see Kyler Lee as Sentinel. So what did you think? How did they utilize her in Armageddon?
Well, I'm glad she got to come on and to give those two random new characters who I don't even know their names of some some good love advice. I feel like she had been reading like a lot of like Dear Abby type columns. She's like really taking it in. Maybe some relationship books. She's married now, so she's obviously maybe she's like one of those people who gets married and immediately wants to give everybody relationship advice.
They're like they should get married.
Listen, I'm married now, so I know a little thing about love. Like maybe Alex is just like a wife. Like she's just like my wife says, and just this is just how we do it. This is just how we do it. She was kind of harsh on Ryan. She was like, you know what? If you don't have love, you don't have anything, and it seems like you don't have love. Unlike me, who has a wife.
Which is so funny because Ryan Choi is married and has a child in another timeline. Right? And that's all we know about him.
maybe in the next crossover they'll both give each other like competing relationship advice. I thought it was kind of crazy that they brought Alex Danvers, who is like arguably the second most major character on Supergirl, into this crossover to give like two side characters a pep talk about how they should hook up. And that was kind of all she did. And
she seemed really invested. She
A
teamed
little
up with Batwoman to take down Reverse Flash, aka Barry.
Okay.
They kind of teamed up a little bit to fight him. But yeah, she seemed really invested in Chester and Allegra. Like she was going to be really upset if that didn't happen, which seems strange because she's never met them. I don't think.
Yeah, I don't know if they're friends or not. That makes
I guess
it even
in that
worse.
timeline they are.
Let's hope she didn't just come in and be like, you know what, I'm sensing some sexual tension here.
I think
and as somebody
you
who
guys should be
is
together.
married,
I think you guys should be.
I did
Please
have
talk
some
about
questions.
kids.
yeah, let's talk about kids.
Now that would have
thing.
been good to work into the Batwoman storyline.
Like if the person to have her talk to about relationship advice was probably Batwoman, not like a Chester and Allegra. Like she knows all about like wanting to have a kid and adopting and having that impact your relationship. She knows that very well. I feel like that's a place where she like her life experience would have actually improved the conversation, but instead she's just like, hello to people I barely know. It looks like you guys want to get together.
But also a bigger question. This is in another timeline. So does this even affect the future episodes of The Flash?
No.
So Are they even in a romantic relationship now? No. So all that pep talk was for nothing.
Well, it seemed like they were doing a lot of work to get them in a relationship.
I can't believe that they brought Alex on to like prop up a side romance between like
in a different timeline.
Yeah, new Cisco and other girl. And sorry, I haven't watched it in a long time, so like I gotta be honest, I don't care. And so I was like, well, we're gonna find out what Alex has been up to, right? Alex is gonna do something really integral to the plot. Alex knows aliens, and instead Alex was like, you guys love, and I was like, no, you are not doing Alex Danvers dirty this way. But to Kat's point, it doesn't even matter, really.
It doesn't matter. And also, they had another character, Killer Frost, where they were talking about her love life, where it made sense. Because, like, oh, I want to get out there now because, like, oh, I looked at, my other identity and I think it'd be nice to get out there. Why didn't they do the arc for her? It seemed like there was at least some lead up for that.
Yeah, I was a little unclear on where they were spending their story real estate in these 5 episodes, because a lot of it seemed to be with like Chester and Allegra's will they or won't they? And I was like, are people, and I don't know, I'm new to this whole world. I don't even know these people. Are people that invested in them?
People are really clamoring for the Chester.
I hear there's so much fanfic. It's been
what's their ship name?
I was about to say whatever their ship name is.
Chester Allegra.
Allegra.
I had some questions about Alex because she gives Team Flash a connection to the tower's mainframe. Why is she still using the tower as a source? Because at the end of Supergirl, the DEO is reborn. And I would imagine that she would have information from the DEO. So why is she giving them information from the tower? That didn't make a lot of sense. And maybe it's a different timeline, like we're talking about.
10 years later.
So here's the thing, though. Like, her giving the information from the tower was actually in the main timeline. So.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And I think that made a good point, because my immediate thing was like, oh, well, Alex is going to show up, so we'll get some little Easter eggs about like what's going on with our cast and like what's going on with the new DEO. And it was like, here I am in the tower. I was like, still? Aren't you? Didn't you?
Why would they need the tower
DEO
anymore?
Wouldn't the writers of the Flash, and I'm maybe not, watch the finale of Supergirl, or like, I don't know,
or any of the other shows.
Call the Supergirl writer's office and be like, hey, what's going on with Alex at the end? Like, just let us know so we can set this up. And like, maybe the Supergirl writers were like, she's really into love.
She kept mentioning
love.
She loves love.
She kept mentioning her wife, and she never mentioned Kelly by name. So I thought that was really interesting. I guess
probably
because
didn't know who she got married to.
Well, I guess if it's another timeline, you have to keep it a little bit vague. So
maybe
you don't mess
she
with
actually
the main
stayed
time.
with Maggie.
Or it could have been someone else.
Twist.
But I thought the tower versus the DEO thing was strange. And then, of course, she conveniently says that Kara and Jean are off-world. And I was curious what y'all thought about this, because it wasn't my impression. I don't know if maybe I'm just assuming this, or if I read this, I can't remember. But it seemed like they wanted to have Kara in this event, but for some reason couldn't get Kara. So they asked Kyler if she would come on. Does that am I making that up?
I mean, if Melissa Benoist was going to talk about love and not be Supergirl, then maybe that's the reason why.
Because I'm just curious, like how would it have been different if Kara was in this event? What
I would hope they would utilize her more, but I don't think they would have, because look at characters like Adam, and look at even Batwoman, who's a main character of a show that's on right now, and they hardly utilize her. So I don't think it would be any different.
Yeah, I mean, that to a point, like, Batwoman is the main character of Batwoman. It feels crazy to say, but Supergirl wasn't the main character of Supergirl, so sometimes you have to clarify.
you never really
you just never know. But like, yeah, you're right. Like, she was the most cameo, I think. Like, I feel like Ryan Choi got, like, he was like, do I believe in love? Thanks, Alex. But yeah, like, she was like a kind of a didn't have much of an effect on anything that happened, really, and she's the main character. So if Supergirl showed up, maybe she would have just been like, "You two crazy kids."
Yeah,
I think she would have taken the role. I agree.
That might have
She
been
would have
her
been
role,
Alex.
which would have been even worse. I think I would have gotten more mad. I was mad enough it was Alex. If it was Supergirl and it was like, well, I could probably solve this situation because I am Supergirl, but I'm going to take a step back and really focus on your love life.
Yeah, so I couldn't remember if I had read that in an interview somewhere or if I was just assuming that, but it made me think, well, what if it was Kara instead of Alex? But I mean, I was glad that Alex was included. I just don't know, to y'all's point, I don't know that she really had purpose to be there, because I think, to Kat's point, Caitlin was seemingly in there with Chester and Allegra in some of those scenes, kind of overhearing them talk about their love for each other. So it seemed like Caitlin could have been that character instead of Alex. So it did.
And I think it would have made more
It made
sense
sense.
too, because
Yeah.
Caitlin is actually friends with both of them.
Yeah.
And I feel like it would have come off more genuine and less like, Alex, calm down.
And also, she has lost love. She lost Ronnie. That was like her whole
Yeah.
basis of her character in the beginning, because that would make sense. And like her saying, like, love's important, life's too short. Like, that makes sense. Like, why not utilize her?
And it feels like she was going through something where she was kind of wondering about her choices that she's made in like the last couple of years and where she is in her life and getting ready to kind of move on to her next step. So I think that would have all tied together and would have felt less random than Alex sort of parachuting in and giving people advice they didn't ask for.
Yeah, I think they could have used Caitlin or Frost in that situation, but I think Caitlin would maybe have been the better choice there, because she was going through some of those things. Donna mentions in the chat, I'm going to have to get some research into this, but Donna says, I actually think at the time she was cast, there was talk about an Alex and Kelly spinoff, but that died before the crossover aired.
Oh,
Morgan,
man.
Morgan, have you heard anything
I did
about that?
not hear anything about this. This would be new to me. That would have been great, because I feel like Esme would have played like a great part in it. And it maybe it was like a half an hour comedy. It was just called Esme exclamation point. She's like, it's me.
I would watch that.
Suddenly it's like a TGIF style, like 90s comedy. They have a butler for no apparent reason. I love all of this. and
She's that little like you got it, dude, kind of Full House character. Yeah, I could
The
see
CW
that.
needs
Sunglasses.
that.
Yeah, Donna,
does.
if you have any more information about that, please send that my way. I'd be really curious about that.
And Trekken mentions that Mia was in this, and I totally forgot. Like, I forgot there was an Arrow
we didn't
character.
really talk about Mia.
To be fair, that's because Mia was in the terrible part 5 of this crossover, and you would have
That's
been
true.
right to repress that part from your memory, because I only remember it because I watched it tonight, and I was like, you are joking with this whole thing, right?
I watched it all pretty back to back, so it all kind of comes together in one little pile of mush. But yeah, I like somewhat remember Mia was in this, but I don't really remember her role much besides that.
She was looking
was
for
there?
her like missing brother, whose
Yeah.
name is apparently William.
William,
Things that
yeah.
I learned in this episode. I did not watch what I assume was the backdoor pilot for Green Arrow and the Canaries that unfortunately did
Yeah.
not get picked up.
I think that's what her role was here, is that they're trying to tie loose ends for the pilot that didn't end up happening.
That's
Yeah,
what it
they
felt
were
like for
sort
me.
of
Kudos
wrapped
to
up.
them then. That
Yeah.
makes sense. At least they tried to do something that meant something.
The Flash Riders were just writing everybody else's shows for them. Apparently.
They were like, listen, we know that you've left some things unsaid. You had some
We're gonna say
plans.
it.
And William's still in the wind, I guess. So we're going to send you off on another quest. I also thought it was really funny, though, that every time that they referred to Felicity, she never called her like mom, which is weird. Like, that's her mother, right? Like,
Yes.
this is the
Yeah, I
stuff I
think-
needed exposition on. I was like, so Felicity's her mom, right? But like, she kept on being like, well, Iris kept on being like, well, have you talked to Felicity? And she's like, I have not talked to that person yet. I have not talked to her. And I was like, do you mean your mother? Like, what's going on there? Well, I want to know more about what's going on with that relationship, because that seems like that's not going well.
And I think like Felicity like raised her, so it's not like
right.
like,
What's happening?
even if they're in a fight, I'm pretty sure she would just still call her mom at that point.
It seems strange.
Mia did have my favorite moment of the entire 5-episode arc. I think it was when she saw Damien Dark and she held like a knife or some sort of weapon to his neck and referenced the fact that Damien killed Laurel Lance. I was like, thank you for doing that, Mia Queen. So that was probably my favorite part of it. So Mia did have the most memorable moment in the event for me.
Even though we didn't talk about her until someone mentioned her. She did have a better role than other characters.
I feel like she was like the character that they brought in that was like, you guys are actually kidding with like trying to save this guy who is consistently trying to kill you and like messing up the timeline all the time. And they were like, you're just angry because you have anger. She's like, okay, or maybe I'm right. And they're like, shh. And then like the angry guy takes her over. So obviously she's wrong. And I was like, I feel like Mia had some strong points though. Do we want to circle back to Mia's points?
And since you mentioned the angry guy, I assume you mean Despero?
Yes, Despero.
We didn't really mention him at all.
Sometimes he was small.
I didn't like him very much. Despero's a character from the comics that's known enough. I would say he's like a B-list villain. And I didn't feel like they really portrayed him that well here. I didn't love like the switching from human to like alien creature. I thought that was pretty weird. And I just didn't like his role very much or his motives.
Yeah, I like mentally was referring to him as a tall Despero and small Despero. When he got to be tall Despero, that's when you knew he was mad. But when he was small Despero, you could talk to him. You could reason with him. So small.
He's saving the budget Despero.
He absolutely was. Speaking of saving the budget, I have to ask Kat about what Despero is like in the comics. But I do have to, before I forget, the fight in the 5th episode between Flash and Despero, I was like, oh, things have gotten tight on the budget, have they not? That was the CGI in that fight was tough. It was like watching a cutscene from a video game.
Which is interesting because early on when the Flash and the Atom are fighting Despero, there were some pretty good special effects. The Atom shrank and he got bigger and he went smaller.
I was like, oh my God, we haven't seen Ray do Atom stuff in like 5 years. I forgot he could even do this. And I was like, this is what it would have been like if there was budget on Legends of Tomorrow. Imagine. But then apparently they ran out of that budget by episode 5. So
like,
I did appreciate that they made like the multiple flashes though. I liked seeing him split up into the various flashes. So
what's Despero like in the comics? Is he all tall or all small?
No, he from what I know, he's not like he doesn't turn into a person. He's just an alien that usually people fight. Like he's usually that blockbuster alien where they're like, oh, big guy that we have to punch. Cool, we defeated Despero today. Like he's usually, and I'm, maybe I'm skimming over the details, but that's usually his role, not whatever this thing was.
Yeah, I think he has the Flame of Pytar. I think that's still similar in the comics. And he does sort of that. I think they got him pretty close to looking like
the alien version.
The alien version I think was pretty close. And I actually thought the actor who played him was like all in. I thought he was giving it his all. Some of those people were phoning it in, but the guy who played Despero was like, I am here to play this part and I'm gonna do it. So I thought he did a great job considering what he was having to do. I bought everything that he was doing. So I appreciated his dialed in performance.
Yeah, I agree. He was all there. He was really bringing the motivation to his character in some of the places where I was like, okay, but now you're destroying the city. That seems like a little bit. Why not just Star Labs? I feel like that would have done it.
Probably. And if you destroyed Star Labs, that might cause another, I don't know, particle acceleration.
Oh, yeah, that might be bad. That might be. Maybe you only need it to.
Season.
It starts again.
I wonder what the rest of the Flash is gonna look like. Oh, I think it's their kids, from what I remember from.
Oh yeah, at the
whatever their
very end,
parents
there's like
fell.
a shining cliffhanger moment where Bart and Nora are in the picture at the police station.
That's who it was in the picture.
Yeah.
I was like, I know that this is a reference to The Shining, and I appreciate that because I finally watched it this year, and now I'm like,
Me
I
too.
get that reference. But I didn't know who was in the actual back of the picture. I was just
Yeah.
like, cool Shining reference, dudes.
Yeah, that's Barry. and
Maybe that'll
Iris'
be our
kid.
next Legends episode.
Yes.
We'll not talk about the Flash. We will only talk about the Shining.
We'll only talk about The Shining. Red rum.
Mark has a question in the chat. Wasn't Despero in the comics Armageddon 2001? I don't remember him in there, Mark. I think Despero in the Flash TV version of it is basically Matthew Ryder who becomes Wave Rider. I think the character who needs to time travel in order to kill the supposed good guy turned bad guy. I think Despero was filling the Matthew Ryder role in there, but
Because he definitely wasn't Despero.
so I think that's what they were trying to adapt into the TV version, but somebody let me know if that's incorrect. But I
I honestly didn't even know this
it.
arc existed, and I know a lot about comics, and I'm not a huge fan of 90s comics. Like, I do like specific runs in the 90s, but I obviously wasn't reading at that time. So I picked up runs from when I, got into comics, but I never even heard of this event. So this must be a pretty underground DC event.
Yeah, they every time they do these crossovers, they seem to pull from a big comic book event like Invasion or Crisis
Crisis.
on Infinite Earths, those kinds of things. So I got curious and started looking up Armageddon in DC Comics, and that's what pulled up. And so I read it, and I was like, oh, I kind of see the parallels and the ways they've tried to turn this into a 5-episode TV arc.
It seems just like a 90s comic event. Like, this is what people talk about when they talk about 90s comics.
It was a pretty good read, but I can see where things changed between issue 1 and 2. And like I said, we'll talk about that in the feedback, but it is kind of when you're reading it, you can see where the shift was in the storytelling.
Where they decided, like, oh, we've been spoiled.
We got to change the reveal now.
Throw it all out,
And honestly,
throw out
they did that a lot back in the day. Like, even like if you look at the Jason Todd death scene, that was changed as well. Like, there's specific things like they changed really last minute with the death of Jason Todd. Like, that happened a lot. So this isn't like something that only happened for this event. That I maybe it only happened because of the leak. But yeah, this definitely happened a lot in comics. And now, I mean, they still do it too. But when it gets leaked, they don't care to change it.
they're just like, well, we're going with it. It's fine. And
Yeah,
everything's
we'll
spoiled
go
now.
with
We
it.
spoil our own stuff.
I wonder
They
if that
definitely-
explains Supergirl comics in the Rebirth era.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
That would explain so much. For me.
Reboots, restart over.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about. I'm curious. I mentioned how much I really liked the guy who played Despero and his performance. Was there an actor or actress in the 5-episode event that you thought gave a really good performance?
Performance. Like, are we just talking acting or
Just-
also story?
Just acting performance. The way they
I
delivered
still
their
go with
lines.
Black
and their
Lightning.
story. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going Black Lightning.
Yeah, I'm gonna steal your answer and go with Black Lightning as well. I thought Cress Williams did like a really good job. I like his connection with Barry too. I thought that they have a really fun dynamic, and I think it was established in Crisis, and they were kind of playing off of it. But I feel like they have like a lot in common, like the way that they grew up, and like when he was talking about how Joe in that timeline was dead, and that they listened to the same kinds of music and that kind of stuff. I like that they had that connection, and it played off of their former stuff in Crisis. Whereas like some of the other people who popped up in the show felt like they popped up randomly, like Ryan Choi, where I was like, well, I remember you from Crisis, but everything about you seems different. So why are you here? Whereas at least I think when they brought in Black Lightning, it played off of what we knew about him previously. And he did a good job of being like, I don't want to do this thing. I don't want to take away your powers. I thought it was interesting that they called their protocol where they remove each other's powers Injustice. I thought that was pretty cool, like a nice link back to the comics.
Yeah, Injustice, if people don't know, is a story where a Superman goes rogue and some members of the Justice League side with the sort of evil Superman, and some people are on the side of we got to stop evil Superman. So that's kind of a play on that. Let's see, in the chat, Mind the Gap, it mentions Grant Gustin and Candace Patton and Tom Cavanaugh. I think Tom Cavanaugh did a great job. I do have a lot of questions about Reverse Flash and Eobard Thawne. I guess they went with he needed to wear Harrison Wells' face to mess with Barry, because Eobard Thawne was played by another guy who was on Legends of Tomorrow.
Yeah. They just forget about that.
Yeah, I like Tom Cavanaugh, and I've liked him in, like, you know, he's played like about 50 versions of Wells at this point. I wondered why he was whispering all of his lines at one point, like in the last. I don't know if this was the whole way through.
It's either screaming or whispering.
It was definitely in the last episode where he went into like a real Batman place where everything was a whisper or a whisper scream, and I was like, now I'm not loving it. And like I've heard him do, like, when he's like the more upbeat versions of Wells, he does, you know, he doesn't always do that whisper. So I was like, okay. But yeah, to your point, that's funny that, like, yeah, in Legends it was a different actor who played Thawne. So
is that Matt Lesher?
I believe so.
It's definitely a Matt. It's definitely a Matt that starts with an L with his last name. I don't know his last name.
Yeah, so I just thought that was interesting. Like, why bring him in there for Reverse Flash? Because I'm very confused about the Reverse Flash. The timeline with Reverse Flash has gotten so mangled. I don't know which one has, you know, and why would they go with one, not the other?
My issue was, like, I feel like Reverse Flash, they bring him in all the time. I feel like Reverse Flash is to the Flash as Lex Luthor is to Supergirl.
Oh yeah, that's a good
villain that was good once and that they cannot let go of. He is the Sylar of this television show.
Sylar.
Where it's diminishing
Even better
returns.
Yeah.
It's like every time that they bring Reverse Flash back, I want to see him less. And it was the same with Lex Luthor too, where it was like, oh, Lex is here. Great.
Because they've done enough with him. And also with the Flash, they haven't really had a look. You can say, like, oh, Zoom was a good villain and stuff like that, but they haven't really had a great villain since him. So why not, like, build up to a new villain? You know, build up to someone just as good as Reverse Flash. You have all these rogue characters. Bring back some of them, even if the lesser known ones. I know you can't use Heatwave and Captain Cold, but there's a lot of other rogues you can use to build them up.
I think is Rosa Dillon. Did I have it in my notes? I think she's the top.
I wasn't really familiar with that character when they brought her in, and I was like, okay. But yeah, I think to Kat's
she's
point,
one
like,
of the rogues.
They just keep seemingly going back to, like, we know this one thing worked in season 1, and so back we go. And it's like, you don't have to. You can break free. It's I mean, Damien Dark is another perfect example of, like, a character who's died about 50 times and somehow always manages to get resurrected and then die again.
To do the same thing.
To do the same thing and die in the exact much the same manner, actually.
And I feel like that was honestly the biggest problem in this whole entire arc, and why I was even a little hesitant to watch is because I feel like it's just the same episode of the show over and over again. Like, there's nothing fresh about the Flash anymore, and I don't want to say that. Like, I want the show to have some new life to it. Like, you know, we go to Legends, and I know we do a podcast on it, but trust me, we would give criticism when criticism needs to
we did last season a lot.
And we did last season a lot, but every season reinvents itself. There's new characters they explore. I never feel like I'm watching the same season, even if a new, like, an old character shows up, like Bishop. they're doing something completely different with him this season than they did last season. So I just feel like this show, it's just the same thing over and over again. And I wish it reinvented itself.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, Legends, for whatever reason, I keep forgetting, like, how many seasons it is. I keep forgetting, like, we're in season 7 now. That seems like, that blows my mind. Whereas when I watched these episodes of The Flash, I was like, oh, this is an old show. Like, I could feel the age of this show creaking along. It's like they're just trying to, like hit their greatest hits now. It feels like they are, and that's been kind of my problem with The Flash, and was one of the reasons why I, like, lost track of it, is that I felt like it repeated a lot of story beats all the time on The Flash. And watching these episodes, I was like, it seems like they're still doing that, unfortunately.
And it was just boring, sadly. And it's funny because today I think Grey's Anatomy was renewed, and it's on its 19th season.
Season 19?
And people, the main actress was trending, saying like, oh man, she's just getting money. That's awesome for her. Like, they were actually like, you know, that Candace Wu tweet where she's like upset that Fresh Off the Boat gets renewed.
Yeah.
They're just sharing that. They're like, oh God, I don't want this show to get renewed anymore, even though it's Grey's Anatomy. And obviously as a fan base, I'm sure people would actually be upset if it ended, but it's kind of getting to a point of that. It's like,
they
what
like
can
want
Grey's
Ellen
Anatomy
Pompeo
do?
to be free.
Exactly. They're like, oh, I guess it's a steady job and she's back.
19 years is a long time at any job.
Yeah, and it wouldn't take much to make it fresh on The Flash. They could take big chances and big swings on the show that would actually really shock people. The idea of them killing Joe would actually be something like, oh my gosh, they killed Joe West. But here they did it, and then they took it back. Yeah. So
I think one of the problems, and this is strange coming from me because we do a time travel show, is that they rely way too much on time travel to, like, try out new things and then undo those things that they tried out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's and the time travel is kind of confusing sometimes. And when you use it too much, it gets to where it's impossible to follow. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah, they were like, when they were talking about, like, well, now he's going to be like erased from the timeline. I was like, hasn't he been before? Does it matter? Does anything matter?
But they were like, no, for real this time.
That's the thing, though. No, for real this time is my main problem with how they use time travel, because it's never really for real if they decide that they want to, you know, and I know all these shows are like that. If they decide they want to bring a character back, they'll figure out some way. But on The Flash, it seems like it's always kind of the same way. And it's always kind of like time travel. It's like timey-wimey, and the Speed Force brought you back. And it's like, cool, I guess. But, like, how many times can it be? No, this time they're really dead, before you're like, no, they're not.
Yeah.
Damien's back.
Damien's back again. They were afraid not enough people watched his story arc on Legends, and so he'll repeat it for you here.
The Flash writers just really wanted to add their spin to it. Is really what it was.
There, just one last blow to Legends. We'll say in the show, you're actually better than a legend. Legends aren't that great. And let's actually retell your whole entire storyline for you. Let's just do it a little better.
Like, yeah, they're like, you know what? It was cute how you did it on Legends, but, like, we're here on The Flash, so, like, we're gonna redo it. Like, why am I watching this exact same thing?
That is so wild. Well, I guess let's kind of wrap up and have some overall thoughts about how do we actually, do we think this was a successful event as a 5-episode event? Okay,
No.
So Kat,
I didn't want to watch it. I still don't like that I watched it.
I feel bad because we convinced Kat to watch it. Like,
like we had like a 30-minute conversation about how I didn't want to watch
this. Kat was watching this under duress.
100%. Literally, it was Amy and Morgan. Morgan's like, I gotta watch it anyways. I don't care. And then Amy's like, come on, guys. We have to watch this. Ray's in it. Do it for Ray. I was like, okay, I'll watch it, but I don't like it. And then I watched it, and I'm like, I didn't like this. And now Amy couldn't make it and didn't watch it. I am gonna get revenge. I promise.
So, Morgan, did you think it was a successful 5-episode arc for this event?
No, I did not. I think there are a lot of issues I think that we brought up with it. The characters that they brought in from the other shows that could have been fun, but they didn't have any plan for them for the most part, or their plans were kind of nonsensical, like whatever was happening with Ray. They had no plan for Alex except as love guru. And so the appearances by these characters weren't that exciting, honestly, to me, because I was like, I want them to exist in this story for some reason. I want them to have some sort of character, something, and they're just kind of there. But it was a 5-episode arc. It did not need to be 5 episodes at all. It could have been like 3 easily. They could have just done away with the whole last episode. Just take that idea and just toss that into the garbage. Because that one was painful. The other ones were not great, but the last one was like actually painful. I was like, we can let go of the Reverse Flash. We can just let him go. Okay. We can let him go. And they're like, no, we must save him. And then Damien Darhk's like, hey, I'm over here, you guys. I'm actually like having some feelings about, parenthood, and maybe I feel a little bit bad about my actions. And
Damien Darhk does not get to live after what he did
I
with
know.
Romance.
But it's so funny that they
kill
spent,
him every time.
They spent like 40 minutes debating whether or not they were going to save Reverse Flash because he asked for it. But meanwhile, Damien Darhk is over here like, guys, I'm really sad about dying. And they're like, yeah, that sounds tough.
Mark mentioned in the comments that anyone watched the Riverdale arc that was on after the Flash. I did not watch it, but I just wanted to mention, I think I would rather watch 5 episodes of Riverdale than the Flash, because at least it's like so bad that I at least have fun.
You could convince me that literally anything was going on that show, and I would believe you based on the previews that I've seen. Like, I'm pretty sure in the 5-episode Riverdale arc, where they called it Rivervale, they ritualistically sacrificed Archie in like the first episode.
What?
I'm pretty sure that
literally?
happened.
You know what'd be so
sure.
much fun for a Legends episode? We should do like a Drunk Sarah episode, but with Riverdale, and we watch a random episode of Riverdale.
I'm so in. If people want to send us the weirdest episode that they can think of Riverdale, it's thelegends@gmail.com.
Please.
I think it's thelegends.podcast@gmail.com.
I believe so. Don't do that
sending,
first email.
Please stop
do that
sending thelegends@gmail.com things. We're sorry, whoever has that email.
Just tweet at us, because honestly, super serious, when Amy comes back onto the podcast, I'm gonna be like, our first hiatus episode, or maybe a Patreon episode, is going to be Drunk Watch Riverdale, and it's gonna be a random episode of Riverdale.
I think it's gonna be great, because every time I hear something about Riverdale, I was actually just talking about talking to the girls from Gay Gals Watch, the podcast, about this. Like, that everything on Riverdale sounds insane. It's like, what is going on Riverdale? There's a cult. Somebody's a serial killer. Apparently, somebody like owns a nightclub. I think that they're 15 or something. Like, I don't.
That's
what's
amazing.
going on that show? I
know Betty and Cheryl fell in love, but as different people. Like, it's like a different timeline. They're like different people, and they're in love. And I kind of need to see that.
I wanted it to be as like a multiple personality situation. Both of them have it, but only one of their personalities loves each other. Like, star-crossed.
Honestly, only on Riverdale. Please.
Only on Riverdale.
Please, write in. I'm excited.
It's so funny because I was watching the last part of the Flash crossover today, and there was a preview for Riverdale right before the last part of the episode, and Mike walks in, he goes, "Is Riverdale part of this crossover?" And I was like, "Oh, God, if only."
If only this would be an even more fun podcast. I will say, what's so funny, I gotta interject, this is the Legends of Tomorrow podcast section of this podcast / the crossover, because Rebecca's always has great docs and always very clean and neat with it, and we just went on this Riverdale little sidetrack that only would happen on Legends of Tomorrow.
I'm flexible. So true.
Yeah, I mean, I thought there were a lot of problems with the 5-episode event of Armageddon. A lot of questionable story choices and character usage and time travel shenanigans. But I think they got to where they wanted to go. They set everything up with the Despero coming into it, and then they got you to where like the Armageddon event happened, and then you see how Flash defeats that and doesn't end the world. And so I think in the end, I think they tied up the story they were trying to tell. I just don't think they did it very well. There were some cool things in there. Like I really liked this shot of Despero.
Oh yeah, that was cool.
So some of the cinematography and the photography for television I thought was pretty good. So there were aspects of it that I thought were pretty good, and there was a lot of detail on some of the stuff they had like written on the boards that I thought were really fun. So there were some things in there that I was like, oh, I really want to read all of this stuff about
once
the
again
Flaming
though.
Fighter.
Once again in this, a dunk on Legends unresponsive question mark. Now I want to know the backstory, but behind the beef between the Flash and the Legends.
Right. It seems like there's a lot there. Someone mentioned maybe because the Flash was not invited to the Ava Lance wedding, even though that was during COVID, so no one was invited. But maybe that was the reason why everyone was invited to the Flash wedding, and they're like, "Well, why weren't we invited?"
Yeah, there's a beef going on. So they put a lot of effort into their boards.
They really do.
In their notes. I think there's one part in here. Did I see something about a Back to the Future reference? I'm not seeing it here, but there was like a Back to the Future reference at one point. So they put a lot of effort into those details in the notes. But I'm like, maybe you should put that effort into some of your dialogue. So it's unfortunate that they don't put that same kind of effort into their actual writing of the episode. But I thought on the whole, I thought they started from point A and they got to point B. It was a little messy there in the middle, but they got to where I think they wanted to go. So let's wrap up our discussion. So I think we're gonna call it on our thoughts. But let's get into. We did have an email come in from Mark, so we're gonna end our thoughts now, and we're gonna get into what Mark had to share. He writes, "Quote: So for Armageddon itself, I had a few thoughts. Number one, I am glad and only surprised that the big bad didn't turn out to be Hawk from Titans. They could have replaced Thawne at the last minute." And this is what I was talking about the spoiler for the Armageddon comic. From my understanding and my reading of the comic, initially they were setting up Captain Atom to be the big bad, to become the Monarch character in the future. But I guess people found out that it was going to be Captain Atom, and then they decided it was going to be Hank, who is Hawk in the Titans, and he ends up being the big bad and Monarch who massacres all the Justice League. So that is what Mark is referring to there in the email. So number two, he writes, quote, "It's great that Iris and Ryan Wilder will be besties in the future, but let's see that relationship develop on the regular shows, not just have it thrown in at us as a fait accompli." Which I need to look up that French reference. I don't know what that means, but I will look it up in a second. In an alternate timeline future. Now I'm very curious. What does a fait accompli mean? That is French. What does it mean? Very curious. An accomplished fact, a thing already done. Okay.
Oh.
Mark teaches
Learn
us a
something
lot.
new.
Mark teaches us a lot of words. I appreciate that. He introduced
Mark
us
one
to
who-
Calvin Ball.
Calvin Ball was
yeah,
Mark too? Yeah.
Yeah. He introduced us to Calvin Ball. Okay.
Amazing.
All right. So number three, he writes, quote, "It was also great seeing Ryan Choi in the original Atom suit from the comics. Number four, it was also great to see Black Lightning. I really like his interaction with the other heroes and wish it would have happened more, and that Thunder and Lightning would get to visit too. Number five, this made me realize how lucky we were that Crisis was filmed in 2019. Can you believe that the last part of Crisis aired just about a month before COVID hit the U.S.? Oh
my
man,
God.
If that had
That's
impacted
crazy.
Crisis, that would have been a mess.
I would have been like, I would say wait, which would be a long time because we still got COVID and we moved for a long time. But I'd still be like, wait, much longer, because that would not be fun to not
That
have
is
that big crossover.
that is a great point.
That could have been bad.
I do have some issues with Crisis, but at least it was pretty good and
Really
relatively
surprised us.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
it was relatively it wasn't as bad as some of the crossovers have been. I guess
I
I'll
feel
just
like
say
they
that.
tried making it big and they try celebrating enough characters. They unlike this, right? Like they try to make it seem big, but then when you watched it, it's like, oh, never mind.
Oh, it's still like 95% of Flash thing, and then Alex is giving love advice over in the corner.
At least Barry had like a story, so
Yeah, it's
you
true.
got to give him that.
That's true.
That never happened on Supergirl, so you got to take it where you can get it. Number 6, Mark writes, fair warning, I'm going male gazy for this one. I was particularly appreciated that they gave Alex and Allegra that scene together at the wedding because, in my opinion, those two ladies have a couple of the finest derrieres in the Arrowverse right now. That's the only time I'm going to allow you to say that, Mark. But I appreciate that you said it in a nice way. So
Very fancy way to say that.
yes.
a lot of French happening. I feel
a
like
lot
in
of
this.
French words. I need to ask Mark about his francophone, his ability to speak French. And number 7, to sum up, for all the limitations they had, I thought it turned out to be a fairly good story and a fun crossover light, unquote. So thank you for writing in, Mark, and sharing your thoughts about the 5-episode Armageddon event.
Cool. And I think before we wrap up our episode, we need to make some Armageddon related snap judgments.
We'll get to some snap judgments. In the game of snap judgments, each person is presented with 2 options, but must only choose one. First instincts are recommended and explanations are unnecessary.
Okay, so our first snap judgment. Would you rather attend CCTC, the Central City Technology Convention, or Eobard and Iris's rehearsal dinner?
I would go with the dinner. Seems pretty. Lisa looked like I had nice food. I wouldn't want to go to a science convention. That seems boring.
It reminded me, the convention center reminded me of Comic-Con, San Diego Comic-Con, and it made me a
Without
little
comics, though.
without
Only in
comics
science.
or more fun things. But it made me nostalgic for those days of like going down the escalator with the big badge on, but not so nostalgic that I wanted to go. Meanwhile, like there were a lot of fun people at that rehearsal dinner, and then also
Batwoman.
Yeah, Batwoman. Listen, the energy level when he gave that speech, I wouldn't want to be in the room for that, but you could duck out. You could grab an hors d'oeuvre and get out of there before the speeches.
Something about the face and wearing the face and the face of the person that you love and the face.
Yeah, there were a lot of warning signs in that speeches. That speech was just one giant red flag, but
I think I would go to the technology convention. The wedding or the engagement or the rehearsal dinner, I guess. The downside is there was a big fight that broke out, and I don't know that I want to be in that. I think I
wouldn't want to be in the fight, but I like to see it. So
I mean, if you could stay back, that's one thing. But if I'm having to be like in it,
you could be like by the bathroom and like peek your head.
No, but I don't want to go into the restroom. That's where Frost and what's his face were.
Right.
I don't think I'd want to be in there for that.
That's true. Maybe there's another bathroom.
Chillblaine, I think is his name. Who's an actual comic book character. So there's that. He didn't have a great costume though.
No, not really.
Not much of a costume. But yeah, so I think I would go convention.
Okay, in order to save the world, you have to team up with a villain. Do you choose Rosa Dillon, aka Top, or Damien Dark?
Oh man. I mean, I'm gonna have to go with Damien just because of the Legends connection. And even though we did that thing to Laurel, which is not good, and everyone else can return besides Laurel for some reason.
Everybody else can return.
I will say he's been trying to turn over a new leaf. So I'll go with Damien.
I'm gonna go with Damien as well. Mostly because he was on Legends and we had some good times. We had some bad times there. But also, I don't know this girl at all, so I feel like she's a real unknown.
She kind of looks like Ileana Rasputin from the X-Men Magic. I don't know if you guys know what she looks like, but the bangs are on point. That's who I think she looks like. Hopefully any commenters are Marvel fans there.
Yeah, I think I would have to pick Damien Dark, even though I hate what he did to Laurel Lance. Because I don't think I could deal with Rosa Dillon the top. Like, I gotta think about it really hard. I don't think I couldn't deal with that. So
use your mind powers, Rebecca.
I couldn't do it.
Okay, who did and wore it better? Barry Allen as the Reverse Flash, or Eobard Thawne as the Flash?
I don't think any of them wore it well. But I thought seeing Barry as Reverse Flash was cooler.
I feel like the thing is, I feel like when Barry wore the Reverse Flash suit, I noticed things about the suit I had never noticed before. And I was like, were the little wings on his head always black like that? Were they always so dark? I was like too invested in like what was happening now. I was like, I guess I'm just so used to looking at Barry that I was like, I don't know about this suit. So I guess
the chin strap also looks weird on
the chin strap.
Tom.
The chin strap was a little bit, I don't know. Everything was strange with the reversal. So I think I'm going to go Tom Cavanaugh in his in the Flash suit. Just go with classic.
Yeah, there was a scene where he went to go talk to why am I blanking on the AI's name? Gideon. When he went to go when Eobard as
Gideon.
Yeah, Eobard as the Flash goes, I think, into the room to speak to Gideon. And it just looks so clunky. It looked like it wasn't fitting him correctly. It looked like he was very uncomfortable in it. So I would say Barry as Reverse Flash because he looked more comfortable in the suit. So that's probably who I'd pick.
So our last snap judgment. You're filling in for Iris on her Citizentopia podcast. Who would you rather interview, Despero or the Royal Flush Gang? I have to say, I completely forgot that like the first episode was like very heavy on like the inner workings of Iris's new like publication.
Yes.
Like, good for her for being a boss, I guess, at some point. Like when this happened, cool.
Yeah, they've moved into the podcast space.
Yeah, I mean, they're really doing it all. They're giving a Catco a run for their money. Unfortunately, they only have like 3 employees, and she just made a middle manager a person who said, please don't give me this responsibility. So we'll see how it goes.
We'll see next episode. For me, I would say the Royal Flush Gang, even though I forgot who they were until I saw that picture, but mostly because I want to know like how they work together, you know? I want to know the chemistry. I hope they're like the Fleetwood Mac of Royal Flush Gangs. Like I hope there's a lot of drama. And I feel like
there's a lot of partner switching.
Oh, 100%.
And betrayals.
A lot of betrayal. Someone leaves the gang at least once a week.
You barely ever get to see the gang all together anymore. Which one of the gang do you think is the Stevie Nicks, I guess?
Oh, that's a good question. The one on the left.
It's definitely the Queen, I think.
Oh,
which one is the Queen, though?
The Queen in this picture is the second from the left.
Well, you know, I'm still thinking the one way on the left. She looks like she has other opportunities, other gangs to join.
I'm also going to go with, and what is their name again? The Royal Flush Gang. I had to look it up because I forgot. They were very memorable, as you can mention. No, I think that there was some weird stuff going on there that I'd like to like dive into. Like, do they have like a catchphrase? What is it with the card motif? Why?
Yeah,
when they decide to go and rob a bank, how long does it take to put that square on their face? Just a square of white makeup. Just so perfect. Do they have like a makeup artist come and kind of like do it for them? Do they do it themselves? Does like one of them do it on another one? You know, do they switch?
Then who does it on them?
Who does it on that person? Does it become then a Fleetwood Mac situation where there's betrayal? I'm really invested now.
Who designs their outfits? That would be
Exactly. Why the black and white color motif? There's red.
What's their
in
favorite
decks
card?
As well. What's
their favorite card?
And what does that say about them?
I, for one, am picking Despero because the Royal Flush gang only spoke in card and gambling puns. And that would get old after about 30 seconds.
No, it'll be an interesting interview. It depends on the podcast, you know? Who's the host?
I would get so irritated at the pun. So at least with Despero, like I could really get into like his backstory, his alien homeworld. What really is the flame of Pytar? Can you please explain the science behind that? I think I would be really interested in that. So I'm going Despero on that one.
Nice. I like it. I think they're all strong answers.
Yeah, and I actually liked that Iris, her Citizentopia podcast actually made podcasting look like, and it is actually this way. It looked like it was easily accessible to people. She really just had a laptop, a microphone plugged into the computer. It's podcasting can be that easy, and I'm glad that the Flash made it appear to be so. You don't have to have a fancy studio. You just have to have a few little elements of equipment, and then you just need to have the
great
gift of gab.
guests.
And great guests. So I'm glad that they actually showed it for like what podcasting can actually look like. She didn't have like a fancy studio and all this kinds of like, you know, the overblown equipment. So I appreciated that they actually showed what podcasting actually looks like sometimes. So I will give it that. All right. So I think that's going to wrap up Snap Judgments. No judgments on your Snap Judgments. All right, that is going to do it for our discussion of Armageddon. Thank you, Kat, for joining us for this Morgan Glennon Podcast Universe event here on the
It was
Supergirl
only worth
Radio.
it for the podcast. The experience of watching was not great. This podcast was.
Well, I'm
Thank
glad
you
we
for
can
joining
make up for it.
our crossover event and talking about more than our love lives. You were more useful than Alex was in this crossover.
I'm glad I could be. I mostly only brought in Riverdale side notes, but
and Fleetwood Mac, don't shortchange yourself.
Fleetwood Mac.
Well, Kat, how can our listeners find you and the Legends of Tomorrow podcast on the internet?
Well, I don't know any of our handles for Legends of Tomorrow podcast, so ask the wrong person there. But you can find me at Comic Uno pretty much around the web, so definitely go check out my Twitters where I'm most active.
Morgan, can you help her out with the Legends
are,
of Tomorrow?
I don't know if Morgan could either, but let's see. I'm ready.
I can because I put it up on my phone. We are. I had to double check you can find the Legends of Tomorrow podcast on Twitter at legends_podcast. You can find us on, I think it's legendsoftomorrowpodcast.com.
Yes, that is
internet.
correct. On the interwebs.
I feel confident about that. We're also Legends of Tomorrow podcast on Patreon. And we have an email address. What it is a question.
It's on that website that you might find.
The question
we might have given a good URL. We actually return this week though, so look forward. We have new episodes coming. We never get a break on the Legends of Tomorrow podcast.
We don't. That's our guarantee to you. Is as long as the schedule is grueling, we will be there. Our email address is thelegendspodcast@gmail.com. I said another email address earlier. Leave that out of your mind. Don't email that poor person. They've gotten probably some feedback from us before.
They're like, what?
Although they have a podcast, like, you know, they must be podcasting something, right? If they have that address.
I think so.
So maybe they're familiar with feedback.
Perhaps they've brought it on themselves.
What if they read that feedback on their podcast?
I hope they do. I wonder what type of podcast it is.
I hope the best for them.
All right. Well, we need to get to some Supergirl Radio and some DC TV plugs. If you would like to contact Supergirl Radio, you can post a comment on our website at supergirlradio.com. You can email us at supergirlradio@gmail.com. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, you can call us at 678-718-7252. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and Instagram, all at Supergirl Radio. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Radio Public, Podchaser, and Spotify, where we also have a Spotify playlist that includes music featured on and inspired by the CW's Supergirl TV series. We are listed on DC's fan page, which you can find at dccomics.com/DC-fans. If you like what we do, we encourage you to give us a rating and write us a review on Apple Podcasts. If you enjoy our Supergirl Radio live streams, make sure to subscribe to the DC TV Podcast YouTube channel and hit that notification bell to get notified when we go live and wired. DC TV Podcast also has a TeePublic store, so if you're in need of new DC TV related t-shirts, tank tops, sweatshirts, onesies, mugs, notebooks, pillows, or stickers, go to supergirlradio.com and click on the TeePublic store link at the top of the page.
Supergirl Radio, Superman and Lois Radio, the Flash Podcast, and Legends of Tomorrow Podcast, Black Lightning Podcast, Batwoman Podcast 2, and Titans and Doom Patrol Podcast just for you. Justice League Dark Podcast, Green Lantern Podcast, Stargirl Podcast, Strange Adventures Podcast, and finally my favorite of the bunch, DC TV After Dark, where you're allowed to say fuck.
And speaking of the DC TV Podcast TeePublic store, that is a tongue twister. We have Adam and Reverse Flash merch. Man, I can't say anything now.
Yeah, we have a lot of Reverse Flash and the Adam and the DC TV Podcast TeePublic store. So if you want to check that out and get some new merch, check it out. And we would like to thank our Legion of Super sponsors for supporting the Supergirl Radio Patreon. These people are Michael, Sam, Anne Marie, Yvonne, Quinn, Nicola, Leslie, Abby Ermgard, Miriam, Cherie, Donna, Nicole, Lizeth, and Faith. If you would like to become a super sponsor, we have 4 monthly membership levels. If you would like to sponsor and support Supergirl Radio, you can go to patreon.com/Supergirl Radio and become a member of the Patreon. And you can find me on Instagram. I'm trying to find my plugs. You can find me on Instagram at The Derby Kid. I'm also on Vero, which is another social media platform, which I love because you get to share what you're watching and reading. If you actually do read, which sometimes I try to, I'm at Derby Kid on Vero, on Instagram at the Derby Kid, and I also have a personal YouTube channel, youtube.com/DuckMilkPride. If you would like to hang out with me on Sunday evenings at 9 p.m. Eastern, I'll be reading through Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice reviews written by top critics of Rotten Tomatoes. It's quite the adventure, reading through a lot of interesting and not so interesting discussions over there. But if you would like to learn more about art criticism and what critics actually say in movie reviews, come hang out with me on Sunday evenings at 9 p.m. Eastern live on my personal YouTube channel.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at Mojotastic. You can also find me as a co-host on the Legends of Tomorrow podcast, where we're talking all things Legends. And it's actually it's starting back up again this week. We had another nice short hiatus, just enough time for the holidays, really.
Just so short.
Because we had that Bebo special that they decided to schedule. Remember that one?
Which is our least viewed, least listened to podcast to date is the Bebo one. So
awesome. I'm glad we suffered through that for nothing. Thanks, guys. The least you could do is listen to it if we had to watch it. But yeah, we'll be back talking about season 7 later this week. So you should check us out.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for this episode of Supergirl Radio. But until next time, I'm still Rebecca Johnson.
And I'm still Morgan Glennon. And this week, we hope you can level up and stay legendary.
McGurk! I love
Not
typing.
mess with my Google Docs, Meeksy.
Supergirl Radio is going live every night of the week. How do you like it? Is becoming a human burrito a plus or a minus? I don't know. It does seem snug.
I mean, they say you are what you eat.
Kira.
I love that.
So I do a podcast called Supergirl Radio, and one of our segments is Lena Luthor Boardroom or Ballroom, because
she looks like a boss in this coat.
Is Nasty Luthor like a different Luthor? It's not just Lena being mean?
No.
Helen Slater here. So fun to know that you're hosting a podcast called Supergirl Radio.
Yeah!